You guys ready?
Yep.
Hi, I hope you are well. This podcast is a place for people to share personal and professional perspectives, talk openly, and ask questions. From serious to silly to sublime, it's all about communication and connection. Always coming from a place of kindness and curiosity, we talk about shared humanity, discuss ideas, and highlight people creating a better world. We've got to keep learning, keep growing, keep being. I'm Melissa Beek, and this is Beek on Being. Hi, everyone. Today's episode is Beek on Being Musically Minded. I have been eagerly anticipating this episode. I am fascinated with the connection of music and the brain. In 1999, my father suffered a brain injury that left him comatose for a month. And though a year later he was able to learn to walk and talk and eat and do everything again independently, there was a time just after coming out of a coma that he was dealing with aphasia, an impaired ability to speak and communicate properly. I found the best way to communicate and connect with him was through music. I just thought of the deep love of music that my father and I shared was of benefit to him in his recovery. Music is a cerebral stimulant. Evidence shows music has the ability to alter our mood, ease our pain, both mental and physical, as well as helping us emotionally, being able to de-stress, communicate, and create. At the time, I had no idea about music therapy and the cognitive and emotional benefits of it. So today is all about music therapy. We are talking to two brilliant women about the effects of music therapy on people with brain injury or dementia. So please introduce yourselves and let our listeners know a little bit about you and what you do professionally.
Thank you, Melissa, and thank you for your story about your dad. Maybe we can talk about that more in this episode. I'm Teresa Lesiuk, and I'm the chair and professor of music therapy at the Frost School of Music, University of Miami. I have been at University of Miami since 2005. I'm a pianist. I keep up my playing. I love to play. I teach several different courses. Uh, I can talk more about the education of the program, and maybe I'll just start with that.
Okay, great. And
And I'm Leah Goldstein. I am a board certified music therapist and graduate of University of Miami, where I had the pleasure of studying and learning under Dr. Lesiuk. And after I graduated University of Miami, I, for 6 years, worked in a hospice setting. And about 2 years ago, I opened my own private practice. We call it High Notes, which is a Jewish term meaning to life, 18. And now I serve not only a few hospice patients, but also dementia, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's. And it's been just wonderful. And I'm so happy to be here.
oh, I'm so honored to have you both on. So, would you both tell our listeners a little bit about how you got into your fields and then tell us what exactly is music therapy?
Sure, I can start. So going back actually to the 80s, I studied music in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. I'm from Canada. And I actually started teaching junior high school first before I went into music therapy. So I worked with young people, middle school. I still really like that age. I like to do music with them. And from there, I also did a master's in education and became very interested in personalities and music. That carried me into studying music therapy at Colorado State University and continued some of my work with personalities and stress in the workplace. I started there with that. Working, doing a thesis actually on air traffic controllers.
Oh, stress. Talk about stress.
So speaking of that, there it sounds like after this, like I'm running from the law because I moved around a lot. And then I went down to San Antonio, Texas. Did a lot of contractual music therapy work. with older adults, memory care, children with special needs. And I ran a program there at which is now the University of the Incarnate Word.
Wow.
And from there, I went back up to Canada to University of Windsor and ran the program there for a number of years, and also pursued my PhD in systematic musicology. Also continuing in the line of work of looking at stress and music in the workplace. So I actually started with the workplace first.
Wow.
And that the PhD I did at University of Western Ontario, and it was called systematic musicology. And then after that, I came down to University of Miami.
You needed to defrost.
On a job invite, and I've been here since.
I love it. I love it.
And so for me, I was born and raised a Miami girl. I actually never really had the desire to want to leave Miami. I come from a household that's kind of split between University of Miami alumni and University of Florida. My mother,
rivalry.
My mother and my aunt and my great aunt all attended Frost School of Music, which was really cool. And my mom is a pretty prominent figure here in the area. She's a well-known cantor rabbi. So I kind of grew up, obviously, just around a lot of music. And for a while, I was like, maybe I'd become a cantor. But then I started to see some of the political sides of going into that kind of aspect. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I would like to go into teaching and like music education. And then I found out about University of Miami had this program. It was much smaller, I think, at the time. I think there was only like 12 of us in the class.
Wow.
It was much smaller. And I was like, okay, I'm going to apply and see what happens. And I got accepted. And if you had asked me then, you're going to be working with, geriatric and senior and hospice, I probably would have like laughed in your face. I was definitely leaning towards wanting to continue working with children. Mm-hmm. One of the incredible things at the University of Miami is each semester we had what was called a practicum, where they literally put us in the field. You have to have a certain amount of hours to become board certified, along with passing the exam. And I had a couple practicums working with children, which I loved. And then at the end, I was placed in hospice. And I kind of was like, oh gosh, like I don't know anything about it. And around the same time, my mother's mom, passed away. So I was still very much like in this grieving and had a very heavy heart. And I went under the wing of another music therapist, Stephanie Riggs-Cruz, who's just brilliant and has become a dear friend of mine. And I was just exposed to this whole world of music therapy and the end of life care, and more on a comfort level. And I felt like, we all come into this world with such dignity, and it's such a beautiful way to welcome someone. And I felt like we all deserve the same peaceful death. And especially looking at a lot of these nursing homes and how these people are confined to just four walls and no one to talk to and not even have a TV. I just felt like they just needed more. So that kind of led me I took an internship with Seasons Hospice, which became Accent Care, and then I accepted a job there. And that's kind of how I went going. And I just have been blown away over the years of working with all the different populations of how incredible our brains respond in the neurological aspect with music, which has kind of led me to where we're at today.
Amazing. And can you tell our listeners what music therapy is?
The exact definition is it's an evidence-based practice that uses music as a therapeutic medium. A lot of people say, "Oh, you're a music therapist. Like, what instrument do you play?"
That's right.
And we play that, but we don't use it to I'm not an entertainer. Like people are like, "Oh, the music lady's here." I'm using it as a tool to provide therapy.
Right.
So we have goals and we have interventions, neurologically, cognitive, comfort. You turn into my definition. Yeah.
I mean,
Dr. Lesiuk, can you tell us more about your research and the studies that you've done to outline the problems of cognitive impairment and all of those things?
Absolutely. I could go into some detail if you'd like about a particular team that I'm working with. And okay, great.
Tell us.
So there is a team that I'm working with that involves. I'm leading it. I'm principal investigator. And Xiao Young Soon, she's a neurologist, is on the team. Roger McIntosh, he's a cognitive neuroscientist, works in the psychology department at University of Miami. Julia Rapani has been part of the team. She's a music education researcher. And then a great study coordinator who I've had is Yianni Iliadis. So there's a team.
It's a great team.
Yeah. And actually it started with Dr. Soon approached me because she diagnoses people with Alzheimer's. And she came to me and said, can we get some music therapy for the patients? And we launched it into some grants. And,
wow.
And actually we were funded by the Dr. Emily Pierce Foundation. And I'll give you a little bit of background, if you don't mind.
Tell me.
Some statistics.
Yeah.
Okay. So we really did end up focusing on mild cognitive impairment, but I'll give a little bit of a lead up to that. So over the past 2 decades, the older population of the U.S. has grown consistently, reaching close to 56 million in 2020. And as that number increases, there's a growing segment of our population that live with some level of cognitive deficit, in that 2 out of 3 Americans experience a decline in their mental abilities at an average age of 70 years.
Which is young.
It's young. This is part of normal aging as well. So there are age-related cognitive declines that are considered normal. And so they're non-pathological. But they do affect mental domains such as processing speed, reasoning, memory, and
so normal aging, nothing like disease or injury or anything like that.
Right, exactly. But so amongst the different types of cognitive decline, our study focused on mild cognitive impairment, which precedes like early Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's. And so adults with mild cognitive impairment, they can participate successfully in activities of daily living, but they report problems with memory as well as other subtle forms of cognitive impairment. So mild cognitive impairment affects about 10 million people in the United States. And that means that around 12 to 18% of people age 60 or older are living with, I'm going to call it MCI.
Yeah.
So, and it can develop for a number of reasons, including not getting good sleep. So in some cases, it reverts back to normal cognition, but it also precedes more severe forms of dementia. And specifically MCI, that's called amnestic, which means problems with memory, is what precedes Alzheimer's.
Okay. Is there a percentage that you have from this group of mildly impaired cognitive to the ones that will present with disease like Alzheimer's?
Yes. That's a great question. So within just a year, about 10 to 15% of those people with MCI lose memory and other mental abilities in a way that does interfere with their daily life. And within about 5 years, a third develop Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, that's a dementia that affects memory, thinking, and behavior.
Right.
So it's estimated that there's 6.7 million Americans aged 65 and older living with Alzheimer's. And that means about 1 in 9 people aged 65 and older have Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a big number. That's a huge number. Can you tell us about goals that you have, both of you, goals and interventions that you have with the populations that you serve, both from a research standpoint, but also, Leah, from a standpoint of in practice, in private practice, including your patients with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and dementia?
So I'll give an example. So I have one patient. So she has very early onset. So she had a stroke. And she also has the beginnings of early dementia, but she's completely cognitively with it. And she still drives and she goes to dance and her brain is completely there, which is very frustrating for her because after she had a stroke, she developed something called aphasia, where her words are there and they get stuck. They just can't come out. Right. And it's actually funny I'm bringing this up because I believe it was like orientation, Dr. Lesiuk. You gave an example of Gabrielle Gifford. Yes, and I never forgot it. The politician who was shot on the left side of her brain. And she learned to speak again using music therapy.
Right.
And what happened is a technique. It's called MIT, melodic intonation therapy. And I have like my notes here.
No, tell us. I love this.
It's basically, it's the left side of our brain. The left hemisphere is the side that processes speaking. The right side is the side of the brain that is music, like melody and pitch. So the whole goal is for someone who's having trouble speaking and their left side has been damaged is to use this really interesting technique and actually get them to to sing their words while doing a little bit of tapping on their left side, and kind of cross those like neural pathways over time. So for her, if she wants to go to the bathroom, for example, she can't really get her words out like, I need the restroom. But what I'll do is I'll use like a very small like intervals, 2 to 4, and I need bathroom.
Right.
Over again, I'll hum it first. I'm going to tap and kind of get some of her motor going. And wake up everything. And over time, she can sing it back incredibly. So if I ask like what she needs to do, she can't say I need the bathroom, but she will literally sing back, I need bathroom.
Right.
And she's like, she's floored. She can't believe it. And that's another incredible thing, is the emotional aspect, especially for these people who have had these conditions where they're still very cognitively there. And I have it with a patient with Parkinson's too.
But having such difficulty in communicating,
or this Parkinson's patient, he has such rigidity and severe tremors, and he wants to still be active in everything.
Yeah.
He loves music, so we use the ukulele, and by using the ukulele, he has something called bradykinesia, which is like a very common thing that happens with Parkinson's, and it's like a slow movement, slow motion. Our dopamine kind of goes down, I believe, with Parkinson's. So by strumming and working on like the rigidity and the muscle movements, his oxygen, sometimes it's hard for him to speak, so we do therapeutic singing and his breath control. So between that and like MIT, and that's a different type of neurological music therapy, the goals are just incredible. And so going back, for example, for the patient with aphasia, is over time, our goal is to train her brain to use her words to sing. And then we kind of take out some of the singing and keep the rhythm going and keep the tapping going. And over time, those pathways are going to kind of intertwine, and she's going to be able to speak better again, which is kind of what happened with Gabrielle Gifford when she was shot, which is really cool. That's why the brain, it's one side is like more isolated music, the other is like more motor. And that's the cool thing about the brain, is that we can kind of intermesh certain parts.
So this leads into another question I have, because before I start the podcast, I always do like a Beek beat to get people into like a good mood or a positive attitude going forward, because I know that music gives off endorphins and it has a powerful effect on our mood. But people have strong emotional connections to music. It's very personally tied to time, place, events, memories. But you just touched on what I want to ask. Is it the repetitive elements of music? Is it rhythmic beats? Is it certain sounds? Are they core memories? Like, what is it about that that allows them, like you said, with patients with aphasia who can sing?
And,
why is music so tied to the brain?
So, well, I guess it goes back to evolution too, right? And that you're looking for patterns in the environment,
right?
Because it's a survival need to recognize what's happening in your auditory sense is very important. So you're looking for patterns that you recognize as familiar, and those patterns that might be a threat.
Right. Well, consistency and comfort, sort of.
Comfort, and then is there something strange that you're not recognizing, and that leads you to maybe a protective mode. All of those pattern recognitions evolve, and they evolve with music as well. And in the case of the aphasia, that's really a compensatory mechanism that's happening there, because about to age 6 of our language is in the left hemisphere, but we process more of the pitch in the right hemisphere, but pitch is connected to speech. So when you bring back that part of the pitch that belongs to speech, you're also bringing back the speech. So like your example of the bathroom, or I want a cup of coffee, and you have this sentence that you want to say, and it's initiated because of that compensatory mechanism. That's part of the answer.
Amazing.
Yeah. Certainly, I think you're also mentioning about sort of emotional responses to music,
right?
And so I can say a little bit more. There's so many things coming into my mind right now.
I know. I have 10,000 more questions, but go lay it on me.
Well, okay. Even before I get to the emotional part, I'm sort of thinking about what you're saying about stroke and Parkinson's, and I've worked with Parkinson's patients actually with some piano camps and looking at improving cognition, because Parkinson's is not only there's not only motor symptoms, but there's cognitive symptoms.
Right.
And there's also speech difficulties. And I had a student who was doing actually a DMA. It's a Doctor of Music Arts and Voice Performance. And he really wanted to work with Parkinson's patients. And so he did some case studies, and he put together a series of 9 different vocal sessions, which belong to a paradigm called neurologic music therapy.
Okay.
And this is all based on how we perceive music or how we produce music. And when we have an understanding of that, then we know how to help a client. So in the case that Leah's talking about, that MIT is once you have an understanding of how music is processed in the brain, then you know how to help at the needs of the client and what the outcomes will be.
Okay. So that's sort of like the psychology of music and how people process and respond to music.
Yeah,
Right.
and how the
Okay.
brain works alongside music. Yeah.
So he had these lessons, and he this particular person had also been in the piano camp with me, and he had some speech intelligibility problems. And so Andrew, the student, worked with this client, and he did the pre-test measures, looking at, how much was understandable in the speech, and recorded it. Went through his 9 sessions, 9 weeks of lessons, and breathing exercises, singing songs, and then recorded it at the end. And it absolutely gave me chills to hear his voice at the end of those sessions, because I could finally hear what he actually meant to sound like.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was very, very moving.
I have chills just thinking about that when
Yeah.
you said that. When I was listening to your, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's incredible. Yeah. Can you tell us more of the studies that you do, like a neurochemistry research that you have and connections with music and our mood and how it affects our mood?
So the studies, there are studies that do look at neurochemistry and mood, and actually mood responses to music are very important for many conditions, including like lifting the mood of people who may be experiencing depression, right?
Which I'm sure is tied into all of these Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, all of it.
That's right. I mean, even if the goal is to walk better, to have better range of motion from a stroke, that person's also experiencing some depression as well.
Of course.
Right? So that has to be
all connected,
addressed, right?
A big loss of independence.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
That's right.
Devastating.
Yeah.
And also, again, personally, my father actually ended up having a stroke years later. In the last 6 years of his life, he was an invalid, but he was mentally still with it. But that depression isn't just for someone who is suffering the lack of independence or the loss of mobility or cognitive or aphasia thing, but it's also their disappointment when they look at their loved ones and they feel that either they've let them down or they feel the guilt for the responsibility now that they've given their loved ones for the caretaking. So the depression and sort of cognitive impairment, I feel, go hand in hand with all of these things.
Absolutely. I mean, even if you just look at mood itself, and let's say when you're really stressed, you don't take in as many options in your environment.
Right.
You become like sort of very narrow, sort of focused. And when
have
you're
blinders.
And when you're feeling even just mildly happy, just mildly content, which is often the result of music, it's usually 90% of the time it's positive.
Yeah.
It has an effect on the cognition so that you're able to take in more options and be more, and it actually has shown to improve creative thinking. You break set more easily.
Right.
That's actually what I took into the workplaces that I was looking at to see, okay, if you have this, you've got stress, you've got positive mood effects that lead to a positive, and there's a whole body of literature that looks at just positive mood, just even a person smiling at you warmly and you have a response. That particular mood lift is so important. It's important for everyday healthy adults. It's important for people experiencing depression. If you don't lift the mood a bit, it's very hard to respond to any psychotherapy.
Right.
And these
you don't get results, period.
You just can't move forward.
Yeah. You're stagnant. Can you talk more about the neuroplasticity and the brain's ability to change, especially through music therapy with your patients?
Yeah, this is definitely the goal is,
Okay.
to have the brain to change. And there are some studies that will show how music will change the neuroplasticity of the brain, and they'll show somebody playing a violin and looking at the five or playing the piano in 5 fingers and how it changes on the cortex.
Like a new neural network.
And there are networks definitely that are looked at. Some of this is I can talk about what we're looking at right now,
Okay.
if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not a neurologist, so
No.
but I'll give it a go here. So I was talking about all the statistics of the Alzheimer's, and one of the things we know is that music that's long known to a person really taps into so many different areas of the brain. So your prefrontal cortex, the cerebellum, lower structures like the limbic system. It also allows you to it ignites what we call like the precuneus, which is area of the brain that basically allows you to time travel. So you go back or you go forward.
Oh, wow. So tied to all the memories.
Right. And
Which I saw a lot of in hospice, by the way, which I'll touch on soon. But.
Absolutely. So a lot of these memories are important to people, and those memories are tied to music, and music is tied to the memories. So we have this associative mood and music
Connection
network. And so that's a network, right? And most of those tend to be positive. And as we age, we actually have something called a positive effect. We tend to have a bias towards positive events and positive experiences. So we came across something called memes, which is music-evoked autobiographical memories. And our study included asking people, both healthy adults and those with MCI, what's some of the music? Where were you? Tell us about that memory. Was it positive? How strong was it, etc. So we did kind of a questionnaire first. And then we put them into an fMRI. And so
for our listeners, tell what an fMRI is.
So that's a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine, which is going to look at the activity of the brain. Right. So we had them listen to 12 minutes of music that was long known to them and that was very meaningful. And then
something they were associated to, connected to in a positive light.
That's right.
Got it.
That's right. And then they had some resting states in there too, and then some non-autobiographical music. And I had to really think about that. And so I talked to somebody I used to work with and or know from San Antonio, Texas, Don Hodges. He's done a lot with brain imaging and music. And so we picked some Tibetan tongue singing.
Right, things that they're not familiar with, they wouldn't have heard, had no association
That's
to.
Right. That's right. It's very interesting. First of all, we had, I just want to, some of what they said was so interesting. The older people tended to focus on sort of the period of their life, whereas research has shown that the younger people, when they listen to music that's meaningful to them, focus more on events or relationships, which makes sense because they're building their
They're
identification.
still developing, yeah. And the older people?
They tend to periods of life because they've gone through different periods of life.
More experience.
And I'm just trying to, just a minute, give me a second here. I'll see if I can find it because it was kind of cool.
I'll chime in for a second.
Yeah,
so,
go ahead.
for
Yeah,
example,
thanks.
in hospice work, which also is a big misconception, people are like, "Oh gosh, you work in hospice, you're around the dying all day." Which is yes, when you're in hospice, you technically have a terminal illness of 6 months or less. It doesn't mean after the next 6 months the doctor is going to come in and recertify you. And I've had patients on hospice for 4 and 5 years, but oftentimes they'd go into an ALF or a nursing home and they're like, "Don't bother. She's nonverbal. She has Alzheimer's. She's not going to respond."
Heartbreaking.
It's heartbreaking. And after doing some work and finding out from the family what the person likes, you can go in there. And like you said, with the older, sometimes they can't verbalize. So you don't know exactly what. But okay, so this patient grew up in Cuba and she loved the beach and this and that. So I would start playing just bedside, sometimes with the guitar, the vibrations on the bed, like a song like Guantanamera. And they would just come to life. And they start, if they couldn't verbalize, start shaking or clapping their hands. And the caregivers would just kind of be like floored, and kind of going, just pigging back quickly to what you said about, what happened with your father and the emotional aspect that affects other people is I found too, a lot of times in sessions, if someone did have a state of consciousness or was comatose, or I worked a lot frontline in hospice. Unfortunately, during COVID, we were we were FaceTiming with the families who couldn't come in. I mean, it was horrible. But I also saw that music therapy extends a lot more than just to the client you're serving, but to the family bedside. And there's that spiritual
100%.
aspect too, that was just like, oh my gosh, like, look, and or we'd all be,
You've lifted all of them.
You've lifted all of them. And it's a really incredible emotional aspect too, that goes very far beyond just the client itself.
Right.
Yeah. That's reducing a lot of stress for the parent, family.
How do you initially assess your patients? Like how?
So usually, it's a referral base. When I was in hospice, oftentimes when you are signed up onto a hospice agency, you automatically will get, a chaplain referral, music therapy. The family can say, sure, go ahead. Or if it's a hospital, you just kind of walk in. You're given the demographic, the diagnosis, and you have to kind of just cater to their needs. Sometimes, like Dr. Lesiuk can tell you, you're going to go in and say, okay, my goal today is to improve motor function or this or that. And you get in there and the patient you got to completely change your goals and objectives.
Right.
So one of the things with music therapy is going to have to be really flexible. You never know always what you're going to get.
You're on your feet.
You're on your feet. Yeah. Yeah.
Why is it, though, that when some neural pathways are destroyed or disrupted by disease or injury, that the ones associated with music sort of remain intact in the brain?
So it's because music is so pervasive. And so some parts of the brain may have, like you say, decayed, or there's death of cells, etc. But there's other parts that ignite, and those pathways will be used. So in the case of the Alzheimer's patient who still responds to the long known music, like you're talking about, Leah, there's all of those areas it's tapping into. So there is the motor, the emotional,
right,
the prefrontal cortex,
and you said sound or pitches on one side of the brain as opposed to
it's not as there's really not, if anything, there's no kind of just distinction between left versus right. It's more network wise, but more pitch is processed in the right.
Okay.
In the right. Yeah.
So all of those things affected.
Absolutely.
Can you, Leah, talk us through what a typical music therapy session would be? I know you just said it, you have to act on your feet. You have to
population.
be. I was just going to say, but
a diagnosis.
What is something that you basically start with? I know you have to be flexible depending on each day that you go in, but how do you begin a music therapy session?
Well, we always will do an assessment, seeing where this person is cognitively, if they're oriented or not, if they're in any pain, and what the overall goal is. Like I said, the incredible thing about music therapy is there's people who use music therapy in the NICU. I have friends who work in the NICU, and there's people like me who are like at someone's deathbed, helping them if they're in a lot of pain. And I go in there and I see that they're tense and they're facial grimacing, and there's certain things that you can look for, their heart rate. Then I know, okay, I need a cater today to help bring down and slow their breathing. And my goal is to relax the facial grimacing. So I'm going to cater it to a meditative music and finger picking. Whereas, someone who, you go in there and they're telling you like this is the issue, or the doctor's telling you like they're having trouble with this kind of cognitive issue or something, you can have your goals. But I always have my goals and interventions kind of in my head, like this is my plan. And, and I always have a session structured. There's always going to be like a hello song, kind of like writing a paragraph. There's like the introduction and then there's the body.
The meat and the closure.
The meat and the closure. Yeah.
Leah brings such a good point. I would like to actually talk about like the training, because I think that probably a lot of the listeners don't know what goes into studying music therapy.
Okay, so if someone's interested and said, wow, this is fascinating to me, where do I begin?
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you train to become a music therapist?
Absolutely. So anybody interested in becoming a board certified music therapist first would audition to a music school. So they've got to have some music training coming in.
Got it.
And then so they're accepted by the music school. And so they do an audition on their principal instrument, be interviewed for the program, and really the personal qualities are having a passion for music at that point and wanting to help people.
I think those are. You'd have to. You'd have to love music and love working with populations.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in a nutshell, I'm just going to sort of explain this in a simple way, but let's say an undergraduate degree, which would be a Bachelor of Music in Music Therapy, in our case, with a minor in psychology from the Frost School of Music. So they'd have a third approximately of their music courses. So they'd have lessons, they'd have be in ensembles, they'd have their music theory, ear training and improvisational groups, conducting, music history. Let's see what I'm getting there.
They'd have to take classes on psychology too.
Yeah,
when you're dealing with
that's the other third. There's behavioral sciences, and actually music therapy, I really do think is partly behavioral science, physical science. It's really studying the music stimulus and how it can be used therapeutically. So those behavioral science classes, there's many psychology classes, and also including a statistics class and a human biology class.
Sure.
And then the other third are the music therapy courses. Some of those are method classes, some theory classes, and then clinical placement. So it's a unique undergraduate degree because they are working with clients still at the undergraduate level, because it's a new enough profession, although it was made officially as a profession 1950 with the National Association of Music Therapy, which is now AMTA, American Music Therapy Association. And their clinical placements. So the student is placed with different ages, different diagnoses, and the skill development happens over, in our case, 5 different practicum, and they get feedback from being on site with an on-site music therapist, like somebody might work under Leah.
Yeah, I've had quite a few at this point.
That's amazing, really cool. Though, to get hand-on.
Yeah.
So, definitely.
Well, that's how you it's the beauty of, not all programs do that. I mean, you need clinical hours, but with UM, I got to do like 5 different placements and see, okay, this is really what I want. This is what I don't want.
Right. And what you're connected to.
Yeah.
Yes. And then at the end of all your coursework in those 5 placements, there's an internship that's required. And it's about a 6-month full-time internship that can be done in the Miami area, or it can be done anywhere nationally because there's a national roster. And then the student sits for a board exam after they finish the internship. And once they successfully complete that, they're MTBC, which is Music Therapist Board Certified, and they're eligible to be hired.
Amazing.
So that's
incredible.
Road. And we have also a master's degree, and we have PhD as well.
That's incredible. Unbelievable. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, people are usually like, "Oh, you're a music therapist? Like, what is that? Just a couple years?" And I'm like,
"No, it's a complete dedication. It is not a couple of years."
And like she said, especially at UM, there's like a minor in psychology. We have like neuroscience.
Right. This isn't something you step into lightly.
This is absolutely not something. It is. Yeah.
So, because we talk about, you have to deal with so many aspects, because it's not just the cognitive issues and it's not just the physical issues, but you were talking about the emotional ones, like when you come in and you have a patient and you realize that they're in severe pain. So it's not really about learning a new communication form or anything like that. That day, you're just trying to de-stress them and release the sort of mental and physical pain they're experiencing.
There is a particular, we have several of our alums at Nicholas Children's Hospital, for example, and several of those, or at least one of them, is actually assigned to procedural support. And so children who are receiving punctures or, things that are hard for them, they're difficult. The music therapist comes in and really is there with the music to support the child. And the child often is able to tolerate that distress with the music therapist there. And the team will count on the music therapist being there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then on the opposite.
Example.
That's a great example, because when my children were little and they needed shots or something, I'm definitely not trained as a music therapist or board certified, and my singing wasn't doing it for them. But
but
the distraction was good enough. But
yeah, and in bouncing off of that, like the opposite of children, like I said, in hospice, of course, there's usually, pain, and especially if they're in the hospital. And I found that, and you can correct my actual data, but if someone had a really, really high heart rate because they're in pain. There's something we use called the ISO principle. So you kind of meet them where they're at. If they're in severe pain, I'm not going to come in and start strumming soft.
Right.
I am going to play loud and I'm going to meet them where they're at.
Right.
And over time, I'm going to reduce and relax my music, the way I'm strumming. And you can watch on that monitor. Oftentimes we stand there and we watch on that machine as the heart rate goes lower and lower and lower.
Incredible.
And I mean, there's
getting that biofeedback right away like that. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Especially because your population must be so difficult. Maybe some of them are not even aware of their surroundings or aware of their loved ones or even aware of themselves with dementia.
We're really present even in hospice. I hate to say it, but I met a lot of extubations, which is the removal of the breathing tube. And the families always request chaplain and music therapy. And when I first started, it was like, why? And it is such an incredible thing. It is so powerful.
Oh God, I wish I knew about you all.
I know. Well, that's what this is.
So
There's just so much awareness that really needs to be.
So can you tell us, I don't know which one of you can speak to this, but does music therapy help break up the amyloid plaque, like the abnormal protein deposits that accumulate in the brain?
I don't think we're at that point yet to knowing that. We did find in our results with the MCI that the brain is different. So there's less connection in the white matter. And then so that makes it less connection between the memory centers of each hemisphere.
Right.
But as far as I know, there's no research yet on those plaques.
Yeah. You haven't got on it yet. I'm
Dr.
trusting you.
Let's go. That's your next.
It's the next one.
Okay, so Leah, you worked in hospice. Will you tell us a little bit more about music therapy towards comfort care?
Yeah, absolutely. Unlike using it for someone maybe with cognitive or speech, the goals and interventions are not going to be as measurable per se. It's not going to be to improve.
Right.
Because when you're dying, there's not that much. I mean, yes, we can try to reduce pain and stuff. But I also found in hospice, there's a very large aspect that is spiritual based. And I found that with my music. I found that when people had some kind of higher power, whether what they believe in, that brought a lot of comfort for the dying. And I think music plays a huge role with that. And bringing family together and people together and just coming in and, you wouldn't know I'm a nice Jewish girl with the gospels that I've learned over time. But like I said, also there's this misconception that hospice means that you're actively dying, and there's not. So there's days that I was called for an extubation at the hospitals, and then from there I'm going to go visit someone at a nursing home who's been on our services for maybe 6 years.
Right.
And that they do have goals that are a little more catered towards, okay, hey, like you're not going to be able to walk again, but maybe implementing a little bit of the MIT and the speech. And like I said, pain reduction, spirituality, family.
Right. I don't think people really until, God forbid they experience this either themselves or with a loved one, that, just because you have limitations, whether they're physical or cognitive, or that you're still a functioning human being.
Yeah, it's so sad. There's so much dignity that's lost. Yes. And especially a lot of these people who don't have families. They're put in these nursing homes.
And left.
And there was this one lady I'll never forget. She grew up also in Cuba, hospice, accent care. We served a lot of we served everything, like Haitian. And but she loved the beach. So we used to come in with... They lack sensory. Went to the dollar store and I got a box and filled it with sand and little shells. And we put on the hat and I'd rub some tactile, little lotion.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to the beach. And I had like my beach music going, and it was just bringing a little more life to them.
Yeah. She probably lit up.
Yeah. I want Leah by my side. When
Can we sign up for all of this? I mean, God forbid we need you. We were definitely.
I always joke, like, what's going to happen when it's like our age that's in hospice? Because we don't have the music that we used to have. It's going to be like, you want to play some Miley Cyrus or something?
No,
I'm like,
no. But what should someone do if they're dealing with a loved one who's suffering from brain injury or dementia?
You mean a caregiver?
Like anybody who has a loved one who's experienced some sort of brain injury or dementia or is suffering from Alzheimer's. What should the caregiver do? What should they know?
Well, I think if they're with Alzheimer's, they can be playing music that is shared between, let's say it's a husband and wife, and share memories that come up from that
they're connected to personally.
Absolutely. I think caregivers, I mean, there's just not enough music therapists to serve every person with
Everybody
Alzheimer's.
in need.
There's
Yeah.
about 10,000 music therapists in the States.
Well, it's definitely not covering the
And
percentages
especially
you
with
gave
the
us in the
1-to-9
beginning.
ratio. Yeah.
Right.
So we talked about music therapies to help with someone who's been diagnosed with diminished cognitive abilities, but what about using music therapy as a way for prevention of memory loss? Do you do that with in your research and your studies?
There are studies of, in fact, actually just with my graduate students today, I was going over with them. This is the age-related cognitive decline. So between 60 and 80, there is a normal decline in cognition. And this study was about learning the piano, something novel, doing something novel like learning the piano. Of course, that involves, motor coordination, involves divided attention because you're reading music and you're looking at the keyboard. There was also some theory component as part of that. And this study had people playing together, like in a piano class. So it's also social. But then when they went home, they practiced for about 3 hours throughout the week. So it's somewhat intensive. There's some engagement and some commitment to the music production. And it did delay that decline.
Okay, good. So we should all be taking up an instrument if we don't already, or doing things to help prevention.
All need to never stop learning.
Yeah.
Right.
If you go and you sit in front of a TV
that's
just because you're
neuroplasticity.
older,
Yeah.
the neuroplasticity, like our brain, like I know it's not technically, but it's like a muscle, just because you know how to sing doesn't mean you should stop taking voice lessons, or just because you know how to train a certain way doesn't mean you need to stretch before. I think that it's just so important for our brains to constantly be
A little challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. And I think I had another question here about that, about if there was specific research that shows that it was a particular genre of music for brain health to stave off cognitive decline, or just something that each individual person relates to. Like, I'm going to give it a little further, because we've heard about a lot about classical music when children are in developmental stages, or even prenatally. Does research show a specific genre of music for helping with brain development, or a specific genre that helps us age cognitively better?
The research in music therapy it leans much more towards preferred music, what the person's familiar with, what they like.
But when you have and maybe this is not the population, but if you have like prenatal, or from the ages of 0 to 6, you have a 2-year-old, are there certain things that we should be teaching children of those ages
Your mother's
in brain
voice.
development?
Maybe not the genre as much as the person is, providing
to help
it.
brain development, music to help brain development.
So I think, the infants, they're going to discriminate between sounds. Around age 4, they start to be able to hold on to tunes better. I don't think that there's a particular genre that is going to be the one that you should have for your child. In fact, they've made mistakes about that. Like in the past, where I think it was the governor of Georgia who funded some like Mozart CDs for every newborn baby.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
My kids are in their around 30s, but we were said, when you're pregnant, as soon as you find out, make them smart, to help brain development, listen to classical music and all.
So there's a whole series of studies about the Mozart effect. And so the initial research came out of California, and the researcher was looking at some IQ scores, and the college students did a little bit better when they listened to music. But she just said, well, the brain was more primed with the music, and some studies followed that. But what they found was when they included measures of like mood and arousal, which the music brought up in terms of arousal, that was the effect that it had on the testing. So
it's not a particular genre at all.
No,
got it. Okay.
But there are age-appropriate music listening for children. Something that's not too complicated that they can sing back.
Right.
The
not
rhythm
that's
repetitive.
like jumping high octaves. Like you're not going to play rap,
Right.
Yeah.
So repetitive.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Why is music so tied to our first created memories, and why we still connect to them? Because I feel like those are the last memories to go. I don't know why.
And
but
hearing is the last sense to go.
is that why?
Mm-hmm.
Is that why we're so connected musically?
Why we have it as a last memory? Is that what you're?
Yeah, like,
or-
why is it the last memories to go? Our connection to music is so deep. I mean, it's
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just reminding me of when I start my piano class, I ask the students to think of their earliest musical memory. And it's always really kind of fun to share those, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time it's remembering their mother singing a lullaby to them. And then they,
oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
yeah, and they bring
It
it
goes
to
back
the
to what you
piano.
said about your mother's voice.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
that's the music that you.
That's the longest term memory. And that, I mean, if the brain is fading as, you know, like you peel an onion, then that's the last
That's the
kind of
last
layer.
layer.
And it's there. And it's emotional. It's tied before you're really socialized and cognitively processing things. You're emotionally responding, and that's where that sits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like if you've had a bad breakup and you're in the car, you're gonna put on a song that's probably a little more mopey, or if you're
Right.
on your way to the gym, you're gonna put on a jam. It's that there's that emotional.
Oh yeah, no one
That
needs
is
to see me
why.
driving to the gym.
Yeah,
'cause
exactly.
the music is so loud.
Yeah.
I've scared my husband when he gets into the car after because I forgot to turn down the volume. But I'm like pumping myself up on the way to work out, and then I forget. And then he gets in the car and he's, what happened?
That's great.
What is the
That's great.
future of music therapy?
You know, before we totally answer that, I
Yeah.
just want to also say that there is another area that I've been working on with it. It's an NIH grant.
Really?
The grant mechanism is called R61, R33, but it's I would actually say this is partly the future of music therapy because there's been this incredible increase in funding made available to look at music and medicine. And a couple of years
Maybe more after this episode.
I hope.
Yeah. And a couple of years ago in Bethesda, Maryland, we came together. There were a panel of speakers. The past president of NIH was there, and Renee Fleming, who does Sound Health Initiative, and there's a lot of funding for music through that as well.
Fabulous.
And so our particular project is mindfulness-based music therapy for patients with stem cell transplant.
Oh,
And
wow.
so looking at combining mindfulness with music and looking at immune function, all the psychosocial parts that happen with a long-term hospitalization.
Oh God, with stem cell, that's fascinating. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff happening.
So
Yeah.
it's wide open. The future of music therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully just the more it's put out there and the more it's like so many people are like, oh, you're a music therapist, so you just go and play music. I mean, that's like what I get all the time.
Yeah.
You know, there's just like a lack of education.
The education.
I think people
Educating
don't
the
understand
public,
the
yeah.
scope of what music therapy means.
It's not. Yeah.
Is there anything we left out about that? The scope of music therapy?
Well, let's see.
It's a very wide range, like I said.
I think we covered a lot.
Yeah, we did.
I love it. To me, I find it so fascinating and transformative, the power of music and the cognitive, physical, and emotional benefits in particular with those suffering from brain injuries and cognitive impairment and disease. So I can't tell you how grateful I am and how appreciative I am that you two were here today. I have been so educated, and I hope our listeners have too. It's been so informative, and it's really critical. It's important, and people need to know more about this for themselves and for their loved ones. So I'm very honored that you were both here. I thank you so much.
Thank you,
For our
Lisa.
listeners, if they want to know more, you could give me information later that I could put out, links and different things like that.
Sure.
Okay. So the thing I like to wrap up each episode with is a thing I call quickie questions. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would you mind telling us something that you've learned from either your students or your patients?
Okay, well, yeah, let's see. Yesterday I was just watching some students use your energy. I that just comes to mind. I was just watching the student working with, actually it was a community living center at the Miami VA, and I just loved her energy, and that was just so therapeutic in itself too.
That's
with
great.
the music. You know,
That's amazing.
Use your energy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one.
I would say for me, a big takeaway that I just get constantly is to try to try to stay positive. I know it's hard, but I have people who have Alzheimer's and are completely nonverbal, and you can tell if they were kind of bitter people or if they're pleasantly confused at the end, because there's two ways that can go. You have the really happy, pleasantly confused Alzheimer's, and you can tell that there's other people who didn't have the best, the anger. Let it go. Life is not permanent, and we're all going to die, and we deserve a good death. And we also, like Dr. Lesiuk said, like there's a 1 in 9 chance. There's a lot of neurological things that happen with our bodies. Let go. Yeah. And try to keep that hope. I think is really important.
I think that's critical. I think hope is critical. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a recent book that you've enjoyed or one that you like to recommend?
There's one that I'm reading right now. I think it's called something 4 weeks, but it ties into how life is finite. And so just think, how does this go? So it's about the decisions you're making right now. Make sure those you want to be making those, right? And it's kind of along that line.
I like that.
I heard it on a podcast.
I love it. Oh, good. All right.
I'm going to absolutely blank on the name, but it's a book by Jodi Picoult. She's one of my favorite authors.
Okay.
And she actually, it's a book about someone who's a beekeeper and uses some types of like music therapy and stuff. She had a loss in her family, and how music has helped her cope. And I'm completely blanking on the name, but if you look up Jodi Picoult, it will come up.
I'm sure. She's a popular author. Okay. What do you think is your greatest strength?
Compassion.
Good
empathy.
One.
Personality.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Okay. And last question. What is your favorite memory? It could be a music memory or just any favorite memory, because we're talking so much about the brain and music therapy today.
Memory. I don't know why this one just came up. Hiking in Colorado in the snow.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. That was just flashed.
I visualize that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. One of my happy places is actually pretty similar, especially because we live here in Miami, and it's always like one season. As I used to spend our summers and winters in Long Island walking on the beach. Actually, met Paul McCartney there one time, just walking on the beach with his family. It was like, no one's going to believe us. I don't have anything for you to sign. But like, I think some of my most peaceful memories are just being out there in nature. Music,
well,
or
it's healing.
Just the music in our heads. You know what I mean? That peace and that quiet. Yeah.
It's all healing.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, ladies. I'm so honored that you were here. So to our listeners, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that you're here. Keep listening, keep learning, keep laughing, keep up with Beek on Being. Listen to Beek on Beek wherever you get your podcasts. All episodes are automatically transcribed. A big shout out and a huge thank you to Stephen Chen at Penthouse Studios.